Greetings and welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardews, and today I'm joined by the fantastically talented creator, Sian Mandrake. Sian, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Sian, you sent over Blood of the Taken, your new graphic novel, and I got a chance to read it not once but twice before the show, and it is absolutely fantastic. And I'm so glad that people reached out to me so we can talk about it, because it's probably not a book I would have come across on my own easily, just because I am kind of like I've kind of fallen into a bad habit of like the stuff I'm reading is the stuff people are like sending to me, or the people I'm going to be asking to be on the show and all that. So like just like going out and discovering things, I've kind of lost that edge just like going out and checking things out, because I didn't even know that John Carpenter and Sandy King had a comic book imprint, which is like how like bad me. Like I should know this. The Thing is like one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm always jamming his music. I'm just like, how do I not know this? How do I not know this? So I'm so glad I got the chance to read the book, because it really is fantastic, and I want to dig into that. I want to dig into how it working as in comics as a creator, and also being a instructor at the Joe KUBERT School, and all the other things in between, how that intersects with each other or doesn't, and how that feeds each other. But first, it's the rule of the show. I gotta ask, Comics Coffee Metal, what are you digging right now?
Right now, so right now for music, my favorite thing, or the thing that I listened to most recently, would be The Cure's new single just came out like I think last week or
Okay.
so. So I listened to that. I think it's Alone, and I think that album comes out like it's the first album in like 16 years or something. So like I can't help
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm like very excited about that. And actually, in the same like breath, Zombie and the Skeletons. I don't know if you've listened to them at all. But they're like
Not
a
in the skull.
horror.
No.
Yeah, they're really
Okay.
fun. It's like a horror
Okay.
punk sort of thing, but they're like kind of poppy, and they're like it's really
Write that
fun.
down.
And they came out with a new song, and they're releasing another album this month. And I'm really looking forward to that too. So that's like some of my
Nice.
favorite like stuff from like when I was like a teenager. So the fact that
Mm-hmm.
they're still making music is like really cool.
Mm-hmm. So, I like The Cure. I'm not a huge fan, but I definitely have a good amount of their tracks in my playlists and all that. Um, I've never gotten like super into like that kind of the. I thought I would, but like the kind of like the more gothic horror punk kind of
Hmm.
stuff. I always feel like that would be something I would be really into, but I just never like found my in with that.
Hmm.
Because I like a lot of the just kind of the vibe and the aesthetics of that. Would you say would be like a good, like, if you could think of one, like a good like kind of like entry point for a mostly metalhead guy like myself to try
Man.
to um
Um, I mean, it depends if you're into like, are you into like faster or slower songs?
I like both. I'm that's the thing that kills me is like I listen to like all things,
Yeah.
all kinds of uh subgenres of all this stuff, and it's just that one particular thing, because even stuff like Metallica is my favorite band of all time, just
Hmm.
because they were there when I was a teenager and all that. So obviously I checked out the Misfits because they were always covering the Misfits, but I'm
Yeah.
like the Misfits themselves never really got their hooks in me with any of that.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm like, I'm of course I'm spacing on some of the
Well,
other stuff
I
I've
would
tried, but
say
like,
like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm spacing on
I
them. I'm
think,
trying to think because I know I've tried other
um,
bands, but I'm
yeah, because I would say like for me personally, sometimes for me to get into like a band, sometimes I like to listen to like a whole album. So I would
mhm.
say like for me, I would listen to like maybe Disintegration, or like what's the other one? I'm gonna have to look. Um, I like that one, and the other one, well, I would try Disintegration.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. Pornography was
Mhm.
another good one, or one that it's like a classic. Um, and those two are ones I don't know. Me
Okay.
be like it, maybe you wouldn't.
And usually because it is the season, I, as
Mhm.
we were chatting before the show, I got the cobwebs up, I got the October, the Halloween light show, I got my my little skulls behind me, getting in the mood for the spooky season. And I kind of find myself gravitating towards my music taste kind of shift
Mhm.
season to season, not
Mhm.
drastically, but like I kind of find like, oh, when it's a night like tonight where it's a little bit crisper out and the air is cooler and all that, I kind of like tend to gravitate more towards, you know more doomy black metal type, not
Mhm.
Black Sabbath type stuff, or on the flip side of that, kind of synth wavy stuff
Mm.
and stuff like that. And so, do you find that's something that you do as well? Because
Um Not too much. I feel like, and it is a little bit, like, depending on the weather, but I think for
mm-hmm,
me, it's like, what am I working on at the time? Because a lot of times I'm
mm-hmm,
listening to
mm-hmm,
music, like, if I'm doing, like,
okay,
layouts for a project or if I'm, like, penciling or inking, like, if I'm doing layouts, I'm listening to stuff without a lot of lyrics, um,
okay,
as opposed to, like, so that's gonna change the kind of, like, so it's a lot of, soundtracks and stuff like that,
mm-hmm,
and then if I'm doing, like, other stuff, it might be, like, faster music because I want something that's gonna make me, like, I don't know, I just want something that has more of a beat to it, and then other times,
mm-hmm,
yeah, maybe something more that's, like, synth pop, stuff like that, so I guess it depends on, like, the kind of mood I'm into, like, do I need to, like, feel
okay.
better, or is it, like, I just wanna get, like, in the zone, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I no, I totally can jive with that, because there's been literally times where it's just like, okay, I need to feel angry right now while I'm
Yeah.
drawing this. What's my angriest thing I got? But the funniest thing is, like, I find whenever I do switch on music while I'm drawing, like whenever I'm drawing like the most like violent or like gory scenes that I'm doing, I'm listening to like the absolute opposite. I'm listening
Yeah.
to like, Tegan and Sarah or Churches or or what
Something
was it,
super
Sleeper
relaxing.
Agent. Just something like lighter, not even lighter, but just like not. I'm not listening to like symphonic deathcore or
Yeah.
anything crazy
You
like that.
listen to, like, Dolly Parton and drawing, like, people's, like, organs splattering out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's just like, and by contrast, if I'm like out grocery shopping or walking to go pick up my kid from school, that's where I got like the most brutal,
Yeah.
most brutal things playing in my ears. I don't know if my brain just needs that like uh that just difference, that just that split of thought or whatever. But yeah, it's just one of those things that I've been thinking about a lot more lately, just because, and I wanted to ask more people about this because you know shifting music, like moods, or like preferences throughout the seasons, and or just general during projects, like it's something that's interesting to me, just because I feel like it like kind of like gives me some sort of insight into other people, where like, okay, why would so and so prefer, they like to listen to you know really dark stuff during the summer. Like
Right.
what, I wonder what like sparks that kind of thought. Just because it's I think it's something that's, I don't think we really think about, or I never really thought about until
Mm.
I started just like talking about it, and like, oh yeah, I guess it's the nights are getting cooler, I find like I'm wanting to listen to other things and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just kind of where that goes, because you know I definitely, again, during this time of the season, like I lend more towards it, and I realize it might just have to do with like the October, it being kind of the horror month. And
Mhm.
a lot of the movies I love have like those synth scores, have John Carpenter scores and
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Or I'm associating it with like doomy stuff from like Black Sabbath or Blood Ceremony, or other kinds of bands of that ilk. So yeah, that's just kind of the thing I do. I was thinking about. But is there you know unless you want to bring up any more bands you're listening to, what would you say would be like the heaviest band you listen to on a regular basis, or semi-regular
Um,
basis, I guess?
Heavy and, like,
Well,
um
whatever. Heavy is a very subjective term.
yeah.
I
I really
realize, but
like, I don't think it's heavy, but I really have been enjoying Leather Strip, um,
okay.
and then
I Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That one, but I
Um,
don't think it's, like, super heavy necessarily. It's not
mhm,
like, but that's, like, one that I've been enjoying. And
mhm.
then there's some that, like, I can't remember the name of it. Bullren and Der Club of Gore, which isn't heavy as in, like, it's heavy, but, like, it's so
Yeah.
depressing that I can't listen to it when I'm in a bad mood because I get so sad. But so, like, there's a very different kind of
Yeah.
heavy where I'm just like, "Oh,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
heart."
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And it's
yeah.
just like
That's
it's just it's intense, but it's not like people saying it's just
yeah.
like it's like weight. There's weight to it.
Yeah. 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 I'd asked that question online once, like what's like the heaviest like riff you've ever heard, and the
Yeah,
amounts, the amount of like different choices people had for me was like kind of staggering because a lot of stuff wasn't even like we would consider even metal, or even like it was like a lot of like alternative rock stuff. So a
yeah,
lot of it, like I kind of like came to this conclusion where it was like it's this context, like what is the context in which you're listening to that,
yeah,
that's what determines heaviness. Because I could say, oh, Metallica is my favorite band all the time. They're not the heaviest band I listen to.
yeah.
Now the average person may think, oh, a heavy metal band, that's Metallica or whatever, but like
Mhm.
if I think of like heavy stuff, like I'm, I like you, I'm thinking of something that's like, no, it's something that's gonna like weigh me down. Something that's
Yeah,
just gonna be like, you know, and then there's the split side of heavy where like, if I feel like something is heavy, it's like when you get that stank face when you're listening to it, it's just like a nasty riff or something. You're like, yeah,
yeah.
okay, you know, just I'm not sad. I'm actually like, I need to go, run through a wall or something right now. you know,
Yeah, there's
um,
a lot of different kinds of heavy, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just something I want to float out there because, and also like you mentioned this band Leather Strip. I'm like, I've never heard of them before, but now I have a new
Yeah,
band I can go check out
yeah,
because, I can ask everyone what name their top 5 favorite metal bands, and I'm gonna get, so many different answers, and it's gonna be so many bands I've never heard of, and that's what I love about doing the show and asking those questions, so I can just go find more stuff because it's fun. It's fun
yeah.
and
I love
enjoyable.
finding new
So
bands. It's like there's always, like, somebody new to, like, explore, and then you're like, "Oh, I have this new band that I can, like, listen to all this stuff now."
yeah, yeah, yeah. My wife and I, we went to our first concert like in almost 9 years this weekend.
Oh,
We
awesome.
saw Spirit Box, Gojira, and Corn.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I was there for Spirit Box and Gojira. Like Corn, like they're fine. I have no deep desire for it. We stayed for their set because it was fine. The show, they played enough of the songs we recognized from
Mhm.
the radio and stuff. But it was just like such a like uh, a fun experience just because we were sitting and like there's all these other people, like again, I'm 42, I'm not young, I'm not super young or anything like that, but like there's a lot of like much older people than us all around us, and we're
Yeah.
like like how old is Corn now? like
Yeah,
because they were
it's
all, yeah, we were hearing conversations, they were all there for Corn. I'm like, I
mhm.
never heard of these. I heard like quite a few. I'm like, I've never heard of these first 2 bands. I don't know what they're like. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh
wow.
boy,
Yeah.
you're gonna have a experience.
Wow.
Um, because like like you could say, oh, Corn's heavy, right, because they have some heavy stuff, but like compared to the other 2 bands, like the just like
Right.
the amount of like sheer screaming or fast
Yeah.
uh playing or just like big stuff, like, oh, you're gonna get something. And the fun thing was like I would hear them after the sets like, oh, I really like them, like I didn't realize that lady could scream like that was really like,
Oh, that's fun.
yeah. um so yeah, so I mentioning that in the context of like this the idea of heaviness, because um those all 3 of those bands, I could say they're heavy bands, just like in such different ways. I don't know if you're familiar with
Right.
Spirit Box or Corn at all. I don't know if they're
Spirit
your
Box,
jam at
yeah, and
all.
Corn. Yeah,
Okay,
obviously.
yeah, or Gojira, and then
Uh, yeah, yeah.
yeah, everyone, yeah, most of them were like, oh, they were the ones at the Olympics, right? They played that song at the Olympics. It's like, yeah, that's it. And they played that
Yeah,
song too because
yeah.
why
Oh,
not?
cool.
You had billions of people watching you. Like you're gonna play that song at a
Uh,
concert. But yeah, so like yeah, like you just even thinking like those bands are just heavy in different ways and all that. So I thought I'd try to mention that because it's, yeah, it's exploring that theme of what that means and all that. And all that. So I think I've rambled on and dragged you along enough through metal. You know, unless you want to talk more about some bands you're enjoying. I think we can dive into the other topics if you want.
Okay, cool.
So coffee or comics. What we
Ooh,
got next?
coffee.
All right.
Um, I mean, I drink a lot of it every day. But nothing special, I guess.
Okay.
Like types of coffee. I've been
Yeah.
sometimes I splurge on like was it Deadly Grounds? Have you had that?
Okay. I have not. I've heard of them though. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's
Yeah.
besides that. I just
Okay.
and I don't know. I like black coffee, but I cut myself off after a
Yeah.
couple cups. Like after like
Yeah.
I don't know 5 o'clock, I try to stop drinking it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I got the fun neurodiversity where I can just drink it
Uh,
right now, and I'm like,
yeah.
as soon as we're done talking, I'll wrap up and then I'm just gonna go to bed. And
Wow.
I'll be fine.
No, I used to be
Um,
able to do that when I was younger. I can't do that anymore.
uh, I think also it doesn't hurt that the fact you know I've been up since super early as well, so my body's just like,
That'll
let's just
do
go to
it.
bed, bro.
Yeah.
Um, Well, I like asking the coffee question as well because again, you get so many different answers with like, how do you like your coffee? What kind of coffee do you like? Do you have like a morning ritual with it? Do you just buy whatever's on sale at the grocery store, toss it in the machine, and then that's what you got? Or do you grind your beans every morning? Do
Mm.
you do French press? Do you do the pour over?
Oh,
Whatever. All,
I
all, all these like fun little nerdy things we can get into with coffee.
I do
Or
French
yeah,
press.
okay,
Um but I'm not great at it if I'm being honest. It's usually like I make it and then like my partner's he's like this is so bad. Like I usually don't like steep it for long enough or like I
oh,
like
okay,
put like too much grounds in or like I don't know. Like I'm
okay,
like it tastes like coffee. I don't care as long as there's caffeine in me. Like I really could care
yeah,
less. But other
yeah.
people apparently don't feel that way. So yeah.
Uh, it's a means to an end, not
Yeah.
necessarily like,
There's an art
uh,
form to it, but I'm not really,
yeah,
I'm doing a lot of other art. That's not the art that I'm
yeah,
focused on. I appreciate other
yeah.
people making good coffee for me.
French press is definitely something like I've yet to get a handle on doing that.
Yeah.
So I do only do it very rarely. Like I only recently got like a food scale, so I can actually
Mhm.
like measure out like how much the grounds are. And like I know people who do like the pour over thing, and they're like, I drink 2 cups a day. I don't know, I only drink like 2 or 1 cup a day. And I'm like, yeah, because it takes you 20 minutes to make your
Yeah.
coffee, so you're only drinking a couple.
Yeah.
But I get it, I get the ritual of it, I get it all, because I've got the grinder, and I grind every morning, and I make sure
Mhm.
I buy, our one vice is really just nice coffee, so like
Oh,
we
nice.
just spend a little bit extra on some fancy coffee every month and all that. But it is also like, I want to say refreshing, and also kind of like almost aspirational, just to hear someone like, you're like, whatever, hot black liquid caffeine, that's what I need. Like
You
I
ever,
need to get to that point. I need to get to that point,
well, I think
so
that's just
I'm
an
not thinking about
addiction.
it too much.
Do you ever freeze the ice cubes, like coffee as ice cubes for your iced
I
coffee?
always want to do that, and I
It's
always
really
forget
good.
to do that because I feel like it's we recently, was that over the summer, we started messing with like cold brew
Mm.
stuff, and we got this pitcher. It's eventually, it's a pitcher with a little like cylinder filter inside. So basically, you fill it up, and then you pour in the water, and then you set it in your fridge for a day, and then you come back and you got some pretty good cold brew.
Yeah.
Um, and I've always try to remind myself whenever I'm doing that, I'm like, oh, I should do some ice cubes too, and then it's usually like during the summer, something. Oh, my ice cube trays are full right now. Okay, I'll remember
Right.
next time. I don't remember next time. That's
Yeah, just dump them
so
out. You don't need the ice. You need coffee.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But it is definitely something I want to start messing around with more too, because I'm experimenting more with like doing like kind of like a smoothie thing in the morning,
Oh, cool.
uh, instead of like not and because my mornings are getting increasingly chaotic. So I'm like,
Okay.
if I can just like toss things in a little blender thing, blend it, and then that's my breakfast while I'm getting everybody ready for school and all that, and I don't have to worry about it. And I'm like, some ice cube coffee would be really good in to add into
Yeah,
this thing.
you just put
So
everything together in one thing, so it's like
yeah,
you're
just
literally like,
you
"Wow,
just
that's some whole meal."
that's that's necessity. You know, that
Yeah.
I guess that's my version of just hot black liquid. Like just whatever. I don't
Yeah.
time to sip for anything. Just blend it all together, shove it down my
Uh,
gullet. Uh,
yeah.
um, so how about comics? When you, I know like when we're making comics, you
Mhm.
find very little time to actually read them because you're just, that's where all
Yeah.
your time is. And usually by the time you're done working on them for the day, you're like, I love these things, but I don't want to see them for a while, you know?
Yeah.
So you have other hobbies, other things, on top of, you know, you not only make comics, but you work in a comic school. So
Mhm.
do you still like make yourself read comics from time to time, or do you, or is that not a problem for you? You just can like stop working, turn around, pick up a comic, and move along.
I don't read comics nearly as much as I should, um, but I do try to pick them up, like, every so often, especially if somebody recommends something to me, if I see something that's, like, interesting, um, but yeah, I do look at comics, like, all day, every day, so I think I watch
Hmm.
more, like, movies, and I read more books than I read comics.
Okay.
Late I think I read, Philadelphia, the 1st volume,
Oh,
recently.
okay. Yeah.
That was good. So
Right.
I enjoyed that. That was, I think, last week or the week before. It was just like I just saw it and picked it up, and I was like, but I think that came out a couple years ago, and I'm finally like catching up with it. So it's like
Yeah.
it takes me a while to catch up on like my reading for comics because of that, and it
Yeah.
is because you like that's what you do all day. And then I feel bad
Hmm.
because there's so many artists that like I love their work, right? So
Hmm.
like I want to
Hmm.
look at their stuff and I look at their art, but like I feel like guilty because I'm like I'm not
Yeah.
reading as much as like I want to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
there is that, like, I should read more, and then it's always the same answer. I'm like, "But I don't."
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, I recently had like a full like schedule change for myself, or now both my kids are in like full-time school.
Mhm.
So my amount of time to work on comics during the day is a huge chunk of my day now, as opposed to 2 hours here, 2 hours here, an hour here, half hour, you know, very piecemeal. Um, so I've wanted to make an effort, like, okay, so like I kind of want to just be done at the end of the day, or end of the work day. And then after dinner, like I'm not going to be like thinking, oh, I got to go finish this page after the kids are down. I'm like, no, I want to go read some of these comics I haven't read in forever and all that. So
Mhm.
I'm getting, and it's a real bad habit to break. I find, because I've been trying to do it
Yeah.
for like the past month and a half now, of
Mhm.
just like not doing that. And I've been pretty good about not doing work, but I've been bad about like actually sitting down and reading stuff. I just finished the series Invincible,
Oh, yeah.
um, which was one of my favorite series. Like it was one of the series that like got me back into reading comics
Mhm.
whenever it came out. And I started by buying all the big Ultimate Collection books, not the super giant compendiums, but like the,
Mm, yeah.
I think it's like the it's like three trades in one book or whatever, and oversized and all that. But I had
Mhm.
not, like, I didn't read the last three for however many years they've been out, just because I just like either didn't have the time to sit down and read it, and then it kind of became a theme like, well, I don't want the series to end. You know, I know this is the
Yeah.
end. I don't want it to end. But I finally sat down. I finally read the ending, and I'm like, okay, this was good. This was good. Okay, I'm glad I did this. I kind of like, you know, peeled the band-aid off of that idea, and I signed up for the Marvel Unlimited app
Mhm.
because there are over probably at least a decade of Marvel books I have not read yet.
Wow.
Because I kind of stopped buying singles when my daughter was born, and that was about 8 years
Sure.
ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, all the House of X, Powers of X, X-Men stuff from Jonathan Hickman and all those folks, like that was like something that I seeing all my friends talk and rave about it. I'm like, one day, one day I'll read it, I
Yeah.
guess. And now,
It's
and yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
It's just it's nice with I mean, with reading anything, comics or whatever, you can always come back to it, right? So it's like you can take a
Yeah,
break and then, like, come back 5, 10 years later and catch up.
yeah, yeah. And it's fun because, you know, it's not that I didn't read any comics at that
Mhm.
point, but it's gotten to the point where like I'm either reading stuff for to talk to people on the show about, or I have friends who make comics. I'm wanting to read their stuff first because I want to like support their stuff, or their Kickstarter, and read their PDFs or whatever it is. And so I want to make sure I spend like my mental energy reminding myself to read that stuff first before I do anything else. Um, so it's just like, okay, now I can do that now, but I can also like, you know, I can finally finish reading Paper Girls. I can finally,
Yeah.
go dive into something like Philadelphia, or Something is Killing the Children, that I hear so many great things about, or
Yeah.
just so many other
That's a good
great
one.
books that I, you know, and so it kind of becomes that thing where I built it up too much in my brain. I think, I'm
Yeah.
like, there are so many things I have to catch up on. I'm like, well, I mean, yes and no. Like,
It's for your
if you can't name them
enjoyment.
off the top of your head, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you put a pressure on it to like, I want to enjoy
Mhm.
this. I kind of discussed this a little bit my last episode, but I one of the first like Marvel things I read when I came back was this event called Sabretooth War, because
Okay.
Wolverine was my guy, you know, and I heard a bunch of stuff about this Sabretooth War thing. So, and I'm no stranger to comics, so I'm like, I don't know a lot of the back. I This was like a fairly recent book, I think, within the last 6 months at least. And so I'm like, okay, I'll get, I'll be able to catch up with some of these characters I don't know, which was fine. But like, I kind of felt like I should be loving the story a lot more than I am.
Mhm.
And it's not that I didn't think it was a well written story. I thought everything was done great, but like for some reason my brain's just like, I want to connect to this more, because
Mm.
the most violent Wolverine story ever, like, that should be my jam. Like, I should be like all about this. I
Yeah.
should be like pumping my fist. I'm like, I don't know what it is. And then, just in the past like few days, I realized like I think I just put too much pressure on a comic, on a
Okay.
story. Like, I had too many
Huh.
expectations of a thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna really enjoy this, as opposed to like, oh, let's let me read the book,
Right.
and all this stuff. So I'm gonna go read it again soon, just
Yeah.
because I want to give it its fair shake, because there was a lot of cool stuff in there and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
if you just weren't in the right headspace, sometimes you just, like,
yeah,
aren't ready to read something.
yeah. Have you ever come across something like that, where like you wanted
Um,
to enjoy something, but you just were not in the right
yeah.
headspace
I
for
think a
it?
lot of times for, like, movies, and sometimes when I start with the book, it's less, like, you have time to, like, get into it, right? But a lot of
Hmm,
times with a
hmm.
movie, I'll be in a mood, and I'll be like, "I don't like this," and I'll come back later, and I'll be like, "Oh, this was
Yeah,
actually good. I was just, like, having a bad day."
yeah,
So I feel
yeah.
like, yeah, it's like you can just be in the wrong or you can be expecting more out of something. So it's good to, like I
Hmm,
like to go in with, like, just, like, enjoy the ride, and then if you're
hmm.
expecting too much, yeah, you can feel, like, disappointed. Um
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
did you see that, was it Uzumaki? Have you ever read that?
No, is one of the like, manga is one of those things that is like the hugest blind spot for me. And
It's
I
a
have
good
a
one.
whole
It's
list of stuff, all my friends, but
yeah,
yeah, that's definitely one of the ones I'm like, I know I have to read this. Too many people I know and respect their opinion say this is amazing. And it just looks really cool from whatever I
yeah.
see. I'm like, this seems like it's up my jam. And I think there's like an anime that came out
Yeah, it
recently with
just
it.
that's what I was like, it just, I think they're just releasing, the, anime for, like, on Max or something. I just saw it, like, right
Okay.
before I came on here. I was like, "This looks
Oh,
so
okay.
cool." But yeah, if you haven't read, like, any, like, manga or anything, like, that would be, like, a good, like, starting point or entry point for that. And it's, like it's so, like, if you like horror, like, any kind of, like, gory stuff, it's so over the top, and it's so creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah. So much of the imagery I've seen, like, seems like it's my thing. This seems like I
Yeah.
would really dig this. So I'm definitely gonna have to like make sure I do that as well, because just, yeah, like it's not that I've never like, if I have anything against manga at all, really. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of really cool looking stuff there. It's just one of those things where, like, I I was coming up in comics as a kid just before like so much of it was readily available, and I had gotten out of comics. I think just when a lot of people my age were like getting access to that finally, and or at least being able to go to the bookstore. Remember those?
Mm.
Um, yeah, and go to
Yeah,
Borders
I
and
was
stuff like that, and go
lucky.
get it. Yeah.
'Cause I mean, obviously, my parents, like, I had access to that because my parents both
Mhm.
worked in comics, so I had, like,
Right.
access to, like, books literally coming into the house every week, and I had those things to read, but also my cousin was really into, anime and manga, so, like,
Hmm.
she would, like, always, like, anytime I went to visit, she would send me home with, like, bootleg stuff, so I get to, like, watch all that stuff, so that got me into that too, so I
Nice.
was getting, like, both of those experiences, but I don't think without her, I never woulda got into that stuff as much as I did.
W- where there would be no comic professionals if there were no older siblings or family members to
Right?
feed them stuff.
You definitely that's
My
what you need.
yeah, my first comics were from my older brothers,
Yeah.
leaving their stuff around and all that. So that's definitely though again I was a kid to teenager in the 90s, so it's pretty easy to get into comics at that point because there's so many
Yeah.
like entry point things. But yeah, yeah, it's definitely something I want to check out, and I want to, because I never really thought like I'm a horror guy. I love horror stuff, but I realize like like all the comics I've drawn are pretty much horror comics.
Mhm. Yeah.
And a lot of the media I take in is like horror adjacent.
Mhm.
um so I'm like, I guess I'm a horror guy. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that,
You
but
appreciate the genre.
yeah, you know it's interesting because every October my wife and I were like, okay, let's pick out some scary movies. I'll pick one, you pick one, but our definition of like horror movies are vastly different. I'm
Okay.
like, let's watch Dawn of the Dead, you know, or let's watch The Thing, or let's watch, Return of the Living Dead. And she's like, let's watch The Exorcist, or, The
That's a good
Omen. And
one.
I'm like, okay. And I fall asleep during those movies.
Really?
Like,
So you don't like that slow
like,
pace?
I, you know, I don't know if it's like I don't enjoy the movie itself. I think just like I just have a bad habit of just like falling asleep
Okay.
during supernatural movies, like the possession type movies. I
Okay.
don't mean to. I really don't. It's just like I'm not trying to knock them at all. Because I want to enjoy them as well, but it's just
Yeah.
like I just for some reason they just activate all the whatever in my brain that's like, all right, you can go to sleep now. It's
It's like
okay.
coffee. You can go
Yeah.
fall asleep.
Yeah. And and for my wife, like she's like, there's definitely like she's not like averse to gore, but she's definitely got her limits. So it's like
Right.
I can't like going too far in one direction on that. Like she's not gonna
Mhm.
um and I have my own limits too. Like what
Yeah.
series is that? There's a new one coming out. The Terrifier series or
Yeah, I'm
whatever. I
not
don't know if
really
you've
into
seen
that
any of
stuff.
those.
It's
I haven't seen any of them, but from what
yeah.
I've read and heard about, like some of the stuff, I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's too much for me. That's
It's
I
like
don't want that.
it's fine, it's just not my favorite genre. I'm more
Yeah,
into, like I want a little bit more story and, like, a little bit more,
yeah,
I guess, nuance. But yeah, that's just my personal preference with horror.
yeah. I think
But
maybe like I think my big thing with horror and what I've seen to gravitate to is like just like I feel like I need to like I want to have like an appreciation of like the work that goes into the effects and all that.
yeah.
So stuff like The Thing, or um I was gonna say more recently, but it's not. It's like over 20 years or 20 years now. The Slither, something like that,
Oh,
where it's
that's
like
a good one,
there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a comedy or tongue in cheek or anything like that, because The Thing
Mhm.
certainly isn't a comedy. But stuff like that, I feel like I just like I like having that like little bit of myself to like latch onto. I think that's kind of like where her and we perfectly sync up at the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
Okay.
because there's all this practical cool stuff in there, because
Yeah.
Peter Jackson's a fucking
It's
madman.
so good.
Um, and then of course, if my wife had a choice, she'd be a hobbit. we'd be living in a hobbit house, and
Ah, that's the
it seems
life.
like it, that I can't argue that. I can't argue
Yeah.
that. There's that
You just
hobbit.
eat, like, what, 10
Yeah,
meals a day or whatever, and
yeah, yeah. You just got to worry about going planting some stuff, and
yeah.
throwing and baking bread, and there's like this whole Hobbit simulator game that's coming out.
Oh, cool.
uh, next year or something like that because uh, we're not really super big gamers or anything like that. And my wife, less so than I. I mean, she'll tear up some Dr. Mario, but like other kinds of games and all that, she's never really taken too much of them. But I showed her that, and she's like, "When is this coming out?" Because it just seems like seems like such a, I guess it's kind of like an Animal Crossing type
Oh,
Hobbit
but with
game where
habits.
yeah, you're just there's no fighting. You're just like you're a Hobbit. You got to
Huh.
farm. You got to like talk to people. You got to build your community. Like all this cool stuff. You got to chop. You got to like make food and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it seems like a really relaxing thing to do. And judging by the response, I feel like you know this is what everybody needs right now.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be a Hobbit.
Yeah.
Um, not to do too drastic of a turn from imagining life as a hobbit,
Yeah.
but I do want to chat about your new book, Blood of the Taken.
Vampires
It's
are like
from
hobbits.
yeah, kind of yeah. They live in holes in the ground.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
um, it's out now. It's from Storm King Productions, who founded owned by John Carpenter and Sandy King. Um, uh, I was unaware that they had their own comic book imprint, which I'm very happy now to know because I can go dig into some of the stuff they got. But first and foremost, I really, really enjoyed the book. Um, I'm not a huge vampire guy, even though my own creator comic book is about vampires. Um, it had to be like I'm not a romantic vampire guy. Like I don't
No.
like the idea.
Yeah.
I don't like the Anne Rice vampires.
Okay.
I like the nasty, you know, just you know, fucked up little guy vampire
Yeah.
kind of stuff, the
The
Nosferatu
Nosferatu.
type stuff, you know. Um, and I kind of do like I try to mix it up a little bit with my book. So when I was reading Blood of the Taken, I'm like, oh, this is this my kind of vampire. This is
Yeah.
just first and foremost, like all the characters, they're all a mess.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah, they're a
everyone's
mess.
everybody's a mess. Um, I don't want to give anything away because I really think people enjoy it. It's a perfect, uh, you know, take on this on the vampires and just like the horror of it. But it's also like surprisingly like sweet and funny in a lot of places, and like it's just one of those things where it's just like wow, this is something you can kind of come back to time and time again. And I want to touch a bit on your art style because I've long said that like I want to see like usually when someone's doing like a horror book or something, it's a more realistic looking style
Mhm.
or very stark and graphic. Um, but I long said like I want to see people who have different styles doing horror, like someone who has, you know, not to say that this is describing your style, but like
Mhm.
someone who has like a more cartoon style, like do something with horror, like do something like
Yeah.
great, like I want to see what that looks like. And I feel like the work you have here is an awesome mix of that, you know, realistic and gritty and dark, but also like the big expressions and the just the dynamics and some of this is like of the movement and the posing, all that. It was really a really like it added a lot, I think,
Oh, thank you.
to the enjoyment of the story and just how it felt like it felt like okay, I've never seen this vampire story before. I haven't experienced something like this with a vampire story.
Mhm.
And um so before I keep rambling on about the art style and all that, it might have been good to open with, Sean, what is Blood of the Taken?
Um, well, it is essentially is 2 ways to look at it. One, it's about, this old vampire named Theo, and she wants to start a new family, because she lost her old one. We don't know why. Or you can see it as these 2 guys who are essentially dragged into this new life, against their will, and kind of how they're dealing with that. Um there's 2 points of view, I guess you could see that as, but it really is about, like, dealing with this new, existence. which is
And
being undead.
yeah, yeah, and it is a book that has some twists and turns, a lot of really great character moments, also really fun gore moments, horrific stuff, and just, again, you really kind of go through all the characters, they go through it in the book.
Yeah.
That's the best way. They go through it. What is it? Everything.
Everything.
There's a lot that happens to them, and it's great. Um, I was are horror comics something that you've always kind of gravitated to yourself, or is it just something like this is uh one idea you've had of like many, and this is kind of what percolated first?
So like I like horror, fantasy, like, well, sci-fi, yes, but like I think horror and fantasy are my favorites in terms of genre.
Hmm.
And then in terms of like this project, um I picked this because first I've always wanted to tell a vampire story. But
Hmm.
this kind of clicked because I was just kind of doing sort of like, it was kind of like writing like a therapy for myself for a while.
Okay.
So it was more of like a personal, not like I was like doing that on purpose, but it was like
Hmm.
ended up being kind of like this like therapeutic thing for me. Um, which I think the characters got a lot of that taken out on them. So but that was, that's their problem. I feel better. Um,
Yeah.
but so I think that's what it was. Is like it was more like it fit what I was doing.
Hmm.
So it was horror just fit the story um, that I was telling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's that's something, I know I've come across, and I know a few other people I know I've come across, where like you make this story, you write this song, you do whatever, and then like it's not until like way after it's done you're like, oh wait, that was about what I was going through.
Right.
That was about what I was thinking. I didn't know that. I thought I was just doing this thing.
Uh huh.
Um, so yeah, that's. I'm glad you got it out.
Yeah.
Happy you're able to get it out and have this book. Um, you know, as I kept going through your art style, you know didn't like I didn't like place the because usually when I see like an art style, like I want to kind of like dissect, like, okay, what influences do I see here, back and forth, and all that.
Mhm.
And while I definitely see the some of the Mandrake line in there, there's definitely some of the, and I mean that in the highest possible compliment
Oh yeah. Thank you.
possible. There's definitely like that, so like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like there's like a certain like rendering texture
Mm.
grittiness
Okay.
that's apparent in your and your father's work.
Mhm.
Um, that is just like, okay, I see that, but like everything else, I'm like, okay, where's their influences at? Where are they coming from? Do you have that like in the back of your head of like, okay, I know I'm pretty influenced from this person or this
Mhm.
person, because I know we're all just a giant melting pot anyway. But like,
Yeah.
do you feel there's some more prominent than others in there?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, like, I really was influenced by, like, German expressionist movies, like Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr.
Hmm.
Caligari, that kind of stuff. And then, like, Frankenstein, like the Universal movies,
Okay.
Dracula. So I think a lot of, like, cinema, and, like, films, like, influence the style as well as, like, artists, like, obviously my dad, because like, how can I not be influenced by that, like, growing
Yeah.
up? And Joe, because, I learned from him, and
Hmm.
then, like, every other artist that I learned from, and even, like, painters and stuff, and, I think a lot of, like, I think John R. Neal was a big influence. He was an illustrator for a lot of, like, the, Wizard of Oz books, um,
Okay.
and that was, like, I was really into that, like, line work for a really long time. I wanted to do a lot of illustration, so I think that played into it. So then somehow that all melted together into what I'm doing.
Right.
You don't, you can't like make that happen. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, it is. It's, I can't claim to like have any like distinct style myself, but I'm at the point where sometimes I'll have at a show or something, I'll have a kid come up and ask for tips or look at their stuff or whatever, and they're always like, I'm trying to find my style, and
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, it's gonna find you.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find it. It's gonna find you. just draw.
Yeah,
Just draw. You
exactly.
know, some days you might end up looking more like somebody more like this influence some days, and then one day it's just going to be you. It's just going to be you.
Mhm.
um I said, if that's anything I can tell you, just don't worry about it, just draw. If right now you're in a, I'm copying this person phase, go through that phase, do it, because when you come out you'll learn some other stuff, and then just keep churning it, keep doing you, because that's no one's going to care about what your style is. They're, in the end they're going to care about, can you tell a story? is what
Yeah.
you was what you're
Mhm.
drawing worth reading?
Yeah.
Because there's some absolutely stunning illustrators out there who, and this is, I'm not trying to knock them at all, because they could draw circles around me on their best, on their worst day. But like, also like, I can't read your comic because I don't get what's going on here. Like, it's
Yeah,
very pretty,
storytelling's
it's
important.
very cool looking, but I do not get the storytelling at all.
Mhm.
And you know, I faith like, oh, they'll get it eventually, and then they'll be untouchable. But it'll be it's just one of those things where it's like, don't sweat that thing. It's almost as ubiquitous as, well, what kind of pen do you use? Like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Doesn't
It doesn't
matter.
matter. Um, and you being an instructor at the KUBERT school,
Mhm.
do you teach like a specific class, or do you
Mhm.
kind of like, are you assigned to like different, you know types of classes, as you go, as the year goes on? I'm not sure how the structure is with all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
so, like, mostly I've taught a lot of, the digital coloring. So, like,
okay.
for the last over a decade, I've been, working as a colorist. It's only more recently that I started to branch out into, like, drawing and stuff like that. Not
Mhm,
that I haven't been drawing, but, like, for myself. Um So yeah, I worked as teaching coloring classes, and I used to do some painting classes, um, and then some basic drawing, advanced technique and style. So that's also like more of a portfolio based class. But yeah, most of what I'm
mhm.
doing is teaching them how to color comics, which is really
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, and the importance of colorists in comics has only just
Hmm.
grown exponentially, these
Yep.
days. And it's definitely something that can, you know like back in the day, like a good inker could save could save some pages. Now a good colorist can
Hmm.
save a book.
Hmm.
And I think it's really amazing, like just how like crazy some of these colors are, because there's some colors who, like, they'll post like the time lapse, the time lapse of what they're
Yeah.
doing, or they'll just post, like, they'll like take out the line art, and you just see, it looks like a painted page.
Right.
It's like this
Yeah.
insane amount of
Fully
work.
rendered.
um and then, which looks amazing, and then you have these other colorists who are like, work at very, not necessarily completely flat, but like flat with like subtle texturing,
Yeah.
subtle shading here and there, and it is equally as beautiful. And I think it's been fun to see in my comics reading lifetime, to see the coloring change from, you know the the original process to, like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, oh, there's these digital separations now, and now, oh wait, now there's this color. And then, Marvel literally bought a company for the coloring for their coloring team, when
Yeah.
they bought Malibu, way back in the 90s. And that was such a huge shift of like
Hmm.
how comics looked and all that. It's just kind of insane. So, I dabble here and there, but my style of coloring is really just not a style at all. It's just like, I'm just throwing everything at it until I'm like, oh, it just looks fine. you know.
Yeah.
So,
It's good
I've
to have
tried
a
coloring it. Yeah.
yeah, having a colorist that, like, knows your style and knows how to work with you is, like,
Yeah.
invaluable. Like, it's so valuable to have that, um, and what I always, like, tell everybody is, you have to be able to work for the artist and, like, color for that style, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's what's gonna really, like, set that apart.
Yeah. And, I haven't had too many colors work on my stuff, but I've had, in recent years, two very distinct color styles on my
Okay.
work, over a few issues. One was for a book I was doing called Spend the Night, and the colorist was very detailed, very, like, tons of shading. I didn't do a lot of spotting my blacks and all that, because I was basically an art monkey in the book, which is fine. Um, but like they didn't really want that like
Mhm.
dark. They wanted like the colorist to do the dark shadows in
Okay.
there. So it was like this very I don't say very rendered look. It looked great. You know, I thought they did a fantastic job. And then on my own book, Evie and the Helsings, our colorist Jason, he's very just kind of mood driven. So
Okay.
you know, if I bring this up a lot, there's a page in our first issue where it's uh, Evie and Helsing. It's about the last Van Helsing. Uh, Evie Van Helsing's the last Van Helsing. Her mom dies. She's next in line to take the mantle of vampire hunter, but she doesn't want to be a vampire hunter. She just wants to play in her band.
Okay.
So
Oh,
um, we're introduced to her in the band, Evie and the Helsings, and you know, I'm thinking like, oh, it's this big band moment. It's going to be this, you know, all these colors and all this rendering, and he just like he smeared it like in stage color. So it's like
oh,
this
cool.
purple and all this, and I'm like,
Yeah,
it was not what was I expecting, but I absolutely loved it.
that sounds
And
cool.
so when you mentioned like you teach everybody like you got to work for the artist and all that, like um and all that, it's really interesting because it's like like I would not in a million years have like been that confident in what I was doing color wise to put that over my own work, but you
Yeah.
did, and it looked great, I
Mhm.
thought. um so like it is like going too far with too many things. That's something that you see a lot with younger colorists, or is that
Sometimes everybody
okay?
like there'll be there's like two groups. One group is I want to put all the colors and all the rendering on the page, and the other group is
Yeah,
like one maybe like one little gradient, and it's like is this too much? So you want
yeah,
to get somewhere in the middle usually.
yeah. Because you know, I wonder if it's I wonder if it's the same with colorists as it is with digital artists, where it's
Mm,
like we have all these tools now and all these like different kinds of like options of like textures and all these things we can start putting
yeah.
um into our work. That like does that like how does that change like someone who's like just getting into that now? Because if I was just to start like if I was a kid just starting to draw now and my parents somehow just got me an iPad with a clip studio and all that, like
Mhm.
like you have everything in there. Like you have everything you ever possibly need to like
Yeah.
put, you know.
Um,
So I'm wondering if there's like but then there's also like the problem of like you have everything. Like so
yeah.
what do you do? You know?
But I still think like having a I mean, there's something to be said for drawing traditionally, and I think learning that
Yeah.
people seem to have an easier time going from traditional to digital than digital to traditional, and I don't know why. It's just and that's just, like this is something I've seen, I don't know if it's, like, universally true. Um, but I think it's, like, it's good to be able to, like, learn to draw, like, traditionally and just, like, get those lines down and, like, get, like, I guess more, like, that motor control of, like, doing those fine
Yeah.
lines and stuff with, like, a pen and stuff, and also be able to learn the tools and all the techniques of all, like, the cool, like, programs that we have, because there's so much
Yeah.
access to, like you can do so much with those programs, and I love, like, Procreate and Photoshop and Clip and, like, everything's, like you can do so much with those. So there's like a
Yeah.
nice like um, meshing of the two worlds that I think is really nice.
Yeah. I took a look at your Instagram a while ago, and I saw that you're doing these pages traditionally,
Hmm.
which I shouldn't have been surprised by because they definitely have that organic feel to them and all that. But you know, there's people who are really great at digital who can basically you won't know the difference. But seeing the pencil pages and all that, I was like, oh, okay. Sean does it old school. Okay, cool, cool. Because it is something that like, even though I work primarily digitally now, you know, I started off traditionally,
Yeah,
and I would like to get back to that because there is something, you know, I miss about that the tactileness, even just
yeah,
hearing the pencil scrape across the page, or hearing the nib, scritch across the page while you're inking
hmm,
stuff and all that. Um, you know, you've mentioned you can work both ways.
hmm,
Um, do you feel like there's a huge disconnect with uh, what you produce, or any kind of disconnect really, with like your comfort level of producing pages digitally versus traditionally. Not that there's a difference in quality, just like you have to kind of wrap your head around things a little bit differently.
I think I'm faster traditionally. I
Okay.
think digitally I end up zooming in and like I'll redraw that line and just keep
Yeah.
redrawing that line, and it's not
Yeah.
good. It's better if I put it down
Yeah.
and I'm just done with it. And also, but like, I mean, I love coloring obviously digitally.
Hmm.
I love doing my layouts digitally.
Hmm.
So I just do my pencils and inks traditionally because I find that's, and I also like the textures, and there's nothing that's like replicating like the brush and pen lines
Yeah.
digitally that it's quite the same as what I do traditionally. So
Yeah.
it's not quite the style that I want yet, and I'm sure there will be
Okay.
something. It's just like I like it, but it's not what I want. So I'm just
Yeah.
picky.
No, I totally get it. And, again, looking at your stuff, there's definitely that, you know, in my head, my brain just calls it organic. Like,
Yeah,
there's plenty of great, digital brushes and pens and stuff
yeah,
that kind of get close to a lot of this stuff, but there's still, it's still not 100%. Just still a
hmm,
little bit there where it's like, no, this is something that has been rendered out with a brush at the end of its life. It's
yeah,
running out of ink here. It's doing all this stuff, which is I again, I love working that way myself. It's just
hmm.
for I'm faster digitally, so
Okay,
naturally that's what
interesting.
I have to do. um I'm also very heavy handed, so
Okay,
like I had a huge problem when I was first getting back into drawing where like all my lines were like super thick.
huh?
And even though we just talked about style not being important, like I knew that's not what I wanted my stuff to look like.
Yeah.
you know
Well, that's like
like
me
just like,
digitally, like,
yeah.
I know that's not what I want, so that's why I like
Yeah.
traditional, so that makes sense.
And so like it was, and I tried digital for a while, but it wasn't until I just buckled down and I got an iPad and I found the right pen setting and the right settings for that pen where I'm like, okay, this looks like what I do on paper enough to where I feel like my brain's expecting things to react the way it would react if I was using it for real. The nice thing was that, one, since it was a screen and a pen, since it was a screen, I had enough mental like disconnect where I'm like, I'm not pressing down as hard. And also you can change the settings. So like I can press down
Mhm.
as hard as I want. It's not going to get any thicker, But I found that once I like got comfortable with that, like it really helped out my traditional stuff, because when
Interesting.
I went back to that, like I still had that mentality of like, okay, I'm being much lighter with all this and all that. Um, though I did do the dummy move. I'm trying to like rotate the page or
Yep.
zoom in on paper, and I'm like, I used to like kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, that's what you did. You really did that. You're not just making a joke online. No, you do
Yeah,
that because
yeah.
you're just
You're,
like
like,
like so
wiping
used
away
to.
the eraser crumbs that aren't there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then like, or like there's no undo, so you got to pull out the
No.
whiteout. You
Yeah.
got to pull out the white ink and take care of that. Um, so yeah, it's fun. When but having been being an instructor and
Mm.
having taught, do you find when you're making your stuff, when you're coloring blood of the taken, when you're drawing it, do you find yourself being like analytical about what you're doing as if you were almost like looking at a student's work, or are you just kind of like in that mode, in that zone, and like comfortable with like, I know what I'm doing?
Um, no, I think every time I do anything, I hate it immediately. Um, I just despise everything I do the
Yeah.
second I do it, and then I put it down. And then I usually come back to it. I'm like, "Hey, maybe it's not so bad." But no, I always have the "I despise
Yeah.
this" phase. And
Okay.
then I have to, and what I tell myself is if I'm having a really bad day, um, it's the story. I'm trying to tell a story. Um, that's the point. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Hmm.
'Cause I'll
Yeah.
I'll get too much in my head. But then I'm like, "Hey," and then I'll look at something, I'll be like, "Oh, I actually like this." But there's always the
Yeah.
tear it up. It's done. This is awful.
Yeah, that seems to be the common phases
Yeah.
for art. They have like the 5 stages of grief. I think we need to
Yeah.
determine and lock down the stages of making art.
Yeah.
Like, because it's very it's very similar, like anger.
Yeah.
acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, and I'm a big, proponent of, done is better than perfect. you
Exactly.
know um no one's gonna remember, like, you know oh, this background wasn't fully rendered, or this hand, maybe a little funky, or this wasn't, done art. If the story's there and the story's good, no one's going to notice that.
Yeah.
And I've come across too, like, anytime I draw something and I'm like, oh man, okay, I instantly like this and I'm really happy with it, it gets like zero response
Yeah.
from anybody. Like, I recently just finished a page and I sent it to my collaborator and I'm like, man, I think I cooked on this page. I think I did something here. And he's like, cool. And I'm like, all right,
Oh,
that wasn't the response I was hoping to have. My own
yeah.
fault for putting expectations on you. But it's like, okay, humbling. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I totally know the feeling. Like, you draw this, like, oh, I gotta hate this.
Yeah.
Recently, I had been going through some old stuff looking for a reference or something, and I came across some pages I did like many years ago, and I'm like, oh wow, like, also horrified in both that, like, I put this out there, and also like, wait, some of the stuff's that bad. Wait, did I not get any better? Like,
Mm.
it's like, wait, if I think this is good, am I not getting any better? You're like, it's
Yeah.
like, just shut up, just shut up and
No.
enjoy.
It's so in your head about that stuff, it's, like, it's hard to, like, realize that
Yeah,
it's just because you're
yeah,
too close to it.
yeah. Um, for Blood of Ticken, you wrote it, you drew it, you
Mhm.
colored it. What, taking on all that yourself, I'm there's an editor on the project and all that, but like, was there a lot of like back and forth with anybody else, like kind of going over things and kind of like having any like feedback or anything along the way, or was it very much you know I I made the thing, here it is, and then whatever editorial guidance comes your way?
Yeah, so, because I was writing it before, it got picked up by Storm King, I was writing it by myself for a few years. It was mostly my own work, but I was showing it a lot to, Justin, my partner, and trusted him with showing, and he was the only one. It was during COVID too, so it was like everything
Okay.
was on lockdown. So it was actually, kind of bouncing all my ideas off of him, which was nice because it's like you need somebody to kind of springboard that stuff off of. And also, like, I think we work pretty well together in terms of like,
Hmm.
I would tell him something and we could do like dialogue together and stuff like that. And I think without somebody to like read dialogue off and like do that kind of stuff, it becomes hard to work in that like void.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it was like, it was nice to like have that like working partner as well.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know
Yeah.
it's late over there. I really appreciate the time you've given us. Blood Taken, it's an amazing book. I'll
Thank
make
you.
sure there's links in all the show notes below where people can go pick it up and check it out. I highly recommend you do. It's a great book, no matter the time of year, but especially now. Like, come
Yeah.
on, like, it's a perfect, get yourself a, what your drink of choice and sit outside on a cool night, watch, the leaves are on the ground, and read an awesome comic. um Sean, it's been a blast chatting with you. I
Yeah.
hope to have you back on again.
Absolutely.
Next time, something else comes out,
Yeah.
hopefully some more
Volume
Blood of the
2.
Taken, or yeah, volume two, open invite whenever. But yeah, it was really a blast getting to chat with you and all that. And I'll make sure there's links to all your social stuff in the show notes below. And you can let everybody know now verbally where they can find you.
I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Sian Mandrake, and I'm on TikTok at Classic Vampirism.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Sean, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you too.